Hi and welcome to another episode of APMG Connect. So, Suchitra and Charlotte are in the chat, so please let them know your name and the city you're watching from, where you're joining from. If you have any questions for the panel, please feel free to pop them into the chat and we'll get them over to the panel to answer live during the show. So, today we are talking about an interesting topic. It is indeed Agile Digital Transformation. So, how can Agile Digital Services help power your digital transformation, and what does this actually all mean? Delivering effective digital services is becoming a very critical part in today's society as citizens and consumers expect the services you deliver to be both digital and on demand. So, for example, from renewing your motor vehicle license or your passport to interacting with your banking or insurance provider, we all expect things to be digital these days. So, in today's event, we're going to take a look at what digital services are, as well as how you can effectively deliver them using the Agile DS framework. So we've got a great panel today, so let's jump right in and meet them. So our first panelist, apologies for that, is Karen van Rooyen. And Karen is the owner and one of the founding members of APMG, and her passion is developing people and enabling organizational improvement. Welcome to the event, Karen.
Thank you so much, Nigel. Awesome to be here, and I look forward to today's session. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it as well. I think we're going to be getting through quite a lot of interesting stuff today. Our second guest is Cor Skeepers, and Cor is a training and learning and performance consultant at APMG. He facilitates various project management, leadership, and business skills courses and development programs, and he has a wealth of experience in Agile, Agile DS, Agile PM, Agile BA. In fact, literally all things Agile is pretty much Cor. So welcome, Cor.
Thank you, Nigel. It's great to be here, and I look forward to the chat.
Excellent. Fantastic. And just want to say a really hearty, warm welcome to our viewers. We've got tons and tons of people watching live. Just a reminder, if you have any questions for the panel, just pop them into the chat and we'll get them straight over to everybody to answer. And it's just going wild in the chat again. So it should be a great show. Everybody, welcome. All right, I think, Karen, why don't we start off and have a look and Cor at what our questions are. So we've got quite a few questions to get through for today's show. So I think the first question is for Cor. Cor, what is meant by the term digital service?
Nigel, if I can follow up also from your introduction, our enterprises are providing services to their customer, and we've moved and we've transformed from the face-to-face to the more digital. And what has been very interesting is that the impact of the COVID lockdown has really accelerated, and many things that we didn't thought could be provided digitally are now available digitally, and there's no end to it. So it may be an existing service that's being digitized, or a new business process that we see, hang on, we can do this in a digital environment. We will unpack it a bit later, but it is anything to do with digitalization across multiple platforms and also multiple products. And then we'll see that we do not want to be excluding. So we also need to take the slow adopters. I'm still carrying my Nokia 3310 and to include me in that process as well. Thank you.
So all good points, Cor. Thanks for that interesting anecdote. Yeah, the Nokia. Oh dear. Okay. So I think, just a shout out to the audience. Why don't you, everybody, pop something into the chat on a great example of digital services that you've experienced, okay, or been involved with or created. Pop it into the chat. I'm sure our viewers would love to hear from everybody as well. So that would be an interesting one. Let's see what comes out of that. So go, viewers, into those digital transformation initiatives. All right, Cor, the next question is also for you. Where exactly does Agile DS fit in?
Okay, as you mentioned, there are a multitude of Agile variants, and the Agile Business Consortium has taken this concept and packaged it for us to present. Agile Digital Services is there to focus on the development, but also the continuous improvement of digital services using an agile approach, with all the adaptability, the feedback, the refinement, and so on. And when we provide you with guidance on this approach, it also helps us to get to a common agile language and a consistent agile approach, so that when we are developing these digital services, which may be on top of existing or new, as we've said, We have got then a typical approach that we have. Consistent and terminology is a problem, but we have stabilized. We are more generic, more agnostic in that regard, and that helps it. In short, successful design and delivery of the Agile Digital Services with also then step change transformations. The now is now. The future is new. And this is going to help you there. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. Core, thanks for that. I think that some of the issues people face with this is they tend to be very, very focused on the now, right? So right now, this is the service we need to deliver. So what is the service that we offer today that isn't digitized? And let's just deliver that digitally now, right? And then we're done. Well, sadly, no. What you need to have a good look at, though, are the trends that are coming up. So what's really happening in the world? How are other people doing this? Delivering your service now might be a priority for right now, which it probably is, and you should be doing that digitally. But you really need to take a look at the horizon and see what's happening, because the technology is changing at a pace that we can almost hardly keep up with. Okay? The types of services that are being delivered now digitally, we wouldn't have even dreamt of, maybe even a year ago. Okay? A shorter time span as a year ago. So you need to take a look at thinking your 3-year, 2-year, 1-year plan. What do those look like? Okay? What kind of technology could you potentially expect to be in play in a year's time? It's hard to predict that kind of thing, but that is the way that you need to look at this. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind again. And that's not a good situation. All right. I think let's have a look at our next question. And our next question is for Karen. So what is the need? Why the need for Agile Digital Services?
Thanks, Nigel. So in today's hyper-connected world, and we are in a hyper-connected world, so as both you and Cor have alluded to, most of the things that we expect as consumers are delivered digitally. And there's also so much choice available out there as well. So we have to be in a position from an organizational perspective to deliver what the customer needs when they need it. And just to your point, in terms of that horizon view, many organizations today don't understand that horizon, right? So a lot of organizations are playing catch up. They're not well positioned to also create digital services for the future. So even to be in a position where I'm anticipating future needs and we're already building those capabilities internally in our organization, where we can toggle and switch on functionality or certain services when the customer needs it. So that's a great position to be in, right? Because you will always be ahead of the curve. You will, when the need arises, so you're anticipating those consumer needs, you're able to be in a position just to turn it on, and you'll always be on top of mind from a customer's perspective. So when we look at Agile, even it's just, if you look at government organizations, the private sector, it doesn't really matter what business you are in. Many organizations are also moving or maturing their Agile capabilities. So it goes hand in hand. So when you look at Agile and digital services, digital services is the outcome, but the way of work in terms of how we're going to get there is definitely through an Agile way of work. Thank you.
Excellent, Karen, thanks. I think that it comes back to that age-old point, right, of an Agile mindset within the organization, doesn't it? Okay. Without the Agile mindset, I think we've heard this before somewhere, but the Agile mindset is so important. If you're going to do this in a non-Agile way, it's going to be quite a tricky thing, and you're definitely going to be left behind, I think, most certainly. But I think also it's really helpful to have a look at the architecture that you're using in place today. And sometimes to achieve the correct Agile Digital Services outcomes that you really want, you may need to re-engineer the entire architecture of how you're doing it from a technology point of view, but also from a people point of view. Okay? Both of these are really important. And I think, Karen, that leads us actually nicely into our next question. How does Agile DS support digital transformation initiatives?
So when you look at digital transformation, I always love breaking down that word, right? Because it's blending the technology and the human element. So the technology is definitely the digital component, where transformation is evolving the operating model of an organization. So we also need to understand that digital transformation doesn't happen overnight. It really takes a concerted effort. We need an integrated strategy, not just a strategy. So a lot of organizations have a great strategy, but it's not integrated, right? in terms of how we're going to move the organization forward in Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. And when we talk about an integrated strategy, as to your point that you've just made, it needs to incorporate the organization, the people, the process, the technology. And definitely when we look at digital transformation, data is also going to evolve that integrated strategy. So a key component of digital transformation is also looking at our data, because that informs our decisions today, but it's also going to inform our future decisions as well. So when you look at Agile DS, it's really taking all of those elements, because we need to be informed, we need to be in a position where we can be ahead of the curve. It's also looking at, when you look at organizations today as well, everybody needs digital skills, right? So even in the capabilities as a consumer, I might want to tailor or customize my front end, right? So I need to provide you with that capability. People within the organization need access to certain data and information to make their daily decisions. And the way I want to view that information might be quite different to you, but we're making the same decision. But that's the way my brain is wired, as an example. So when you look at DS, Agile DS, it really looks at how do we get these things to market quicker? How do we use our cross-functional teams and build these digital services capabilities within our organization? And that's how we're going to create this sustainability ultimately at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. You know, I think that there's another element that we probably should touch on here, and that is the world of AI. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, artificial intelligence is definitely playing a role in a lot of digital transformation these days. Okay. Just take a look at what's really happening out there. I mean, even Microsoft have now launched their own version of ChatGPT. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody's tested it, but I mean, these things come with a lot of risks as well. We know this, right? Anybody who has thought about this can realize there's a lot of risk that's associated with using the data that you get back from some of these chat engines. But it isn't limited to chat engines. There are now AI art bots on the internet, okay? So, I mean, you can go onto some of these sites and use your imagination literally to create an image that is 100% unique to you and generated by artificial intelligence software, right? And some of those services that are being provided right now are going to be used and be integrated within your digital transformation initiatives. But I like to touch on that other point. Yeah, Karen, you go ahead, then I'll raise what I wanted to say.
So that also then raises the issue around cybersecurity, right? So when we look at DS and digital transformation, that is a huge component. So, it brings ethical dilemmas into consideration. When we look at all the different types of acts around privacy, security, it touches on a wide range of things that we need to consider. And it is important that everybody in the organization understands it. In the past, it was more around, this is RT's problem, I want this project delivered, and off you go and give me what I need when I need it, right? And now when you look at Agile DS and digital transformation, this is a collaborative thing. And we need to bring these teams together. We all need to be asking the right questions as well, because I think that's also key. Because these kind of things with things like artificial intelligence, they do bring these ethical dilemmas into play as well, right? And things like cybersecurity. So we have to be in a position to ask the right questions, have the right people around the table. But it's not just also saying that business today, guess what? It's just RT's problem, right? You also, as an individual, have to continuously enhance your own digital services skills as well in order to create that value.
100% agree with you there. 100% agree with you. I think that the cybersecurity element of it is an entire topic all on its own. Yeah.
No, for sure, but it brings it in. It
does.
Definitely brings it in. You have to consider those things.
It is very, very relevant with all digital services. Data privacy and data protection, that is one of the key downfalls of most digital services. How many times have we heard in the news, okay, that somebody launched a digital services and, oh no, like 2 weeks later it got hacked and we lost 500,000 user records? Not good. Cora, what are your thoughts?
To that point, in the last week, Facebook had a glitch. And when you looked at somebody to stalk them and sent an invite to them. Now, as a good stalker, I don't like that.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good points there. So just lastly on this topic, though, big data is becoming much, much more prevalent. Okay? as a part of the digital transformation, because as you said, Karen, it's all driven by data. Yeah, it's what you're doing with the data, how you're presenting the data, how you're manipulating it, how you're transforming that data into something that is usable. And that's one of the key, I would say, areas that you have to incorporate into your strategy moving forward. So take a look at big data, because that is something that is going to be, I would say, almost a key to success for digital transformation initiatives later. So just want to shout out to our viewers. We have so many people watching online. So welcome Suchitra from Bangalore. Suchitra is in the chat, works for APMG, is in the chat and help you with anything. Charlotte as well. Let us know where you're watching from. Hi, Sean. Nice to see you online. Thanks for joining. And Lynn from Johannesburg as well. Great to see you online. Rohit as well from India is becoming a bit of a regular to watch it. And we've got Anna from Poland as well. So many folks online, and we've even got folks from Saudi Arabia. Hi, Ahmed. Nice to have you here, and Julian as well. Welcome. Hope you're enjoying the show. So tons of people online. If you have any questions for the panel, please do not hesitate to put them into the chat, and we'll get them over to the panel live. All right. Okay, with that, folks, I think that we're going to move on to our next question. And our next question is, how does Agile DS support digital transformation initiatives? We've actually already done that one. So let's move on to the correct one. What is the Agile DS guidance based on? And this question is for Core.
Nigel, every good guidance must have an origin. And Agile has been around since the middle 1990s. Some reports speaking to its concepts were already written in the 1980s, late 1980s. However, digital transformation is much younger and much more fresh in that regard. The others have had their updates. It has its origin in the UK government, and they have an area called Government Digital Services. You alluded to having a passport, an ID, and so on and so on. And for that, they developed initially internal, a digital services standard. And this gave them guidance on how to develop it. But then in 2018, 5 years ago, the Agile Business Consortium took that digital standard and wrapped it in an Agile wrapper, making it available for use worldwide. So although it has its origin in government digital services, it is definitely not limited to it. It is actually generic and available to all. And that then, from the Agile Business Consortium, led to the publication of the official document, the official handbook on digital services, which also will speak about the course content later. But that forms the basis for our teaching and the understanding. So in short, origin is from UK government, but it's now all over and available to every one of us.
Excellent. Yeah. I just want to make that point as well. It is really important that while it did originate out of the UK government's initiatives, it is valid for anybody worldwide and should be looked at in serious, take it seriously. It's very, very helpful framework. It allows you to really understand what's required, and it focuses a lot on the delivery to the customer. It's very customer-centric. And that's, at the end of the day, what we're looking for here, isn't it? Okay. So customer-centric, by the way, come back on that AI thing, doesn't always necessarily mean machine learning is right. Yeah. So think that through. All right. Thanks, Core. That's really awesome. Okay. I think our next question is, was any research done leading up to the development of Agile DS? Okay. So what research findings were there? Core, I think you can take this one as well, huh?
At heart, I'm a researcher, so I also want to know, but where is this wisdom coming from? Was it a weekend at the beach with a laptop or a tablet? No. There is a recognition, and we've mentioned it as well, that most organizations have an ever-growing appetite to launch digital services. And in that sense, and contrasting it with traditional heavy governance, traditional planning up front, concrete the plan, don't deviate from it. Here we are saying, hang on. In being adaptive, let's be less bureaucratic. Let's be more flexible. Let's be focused on setting the goals. Let's, even horror of horrors, delegate the decision-making be comfortable with your ego and let that go. And what Karen also has said, and I think Nigel, you as well, it becomes now a cross-organizational conversation, because digital services is not a part of the firm, it is the firm. The organization is now the entity that is transforming. And therefore, in the research, we also found that people throughout the organization need to have this understanding. Here we're talking about concepts and tools and techniques and even terminology that may be new, but not everything new is bad. Actually, this is very exciting. And finally, what it also then does, and it turns the organizational hierarchy a little bit on its head, which is not bad. It leads to multidisciplinary teams where we don't have these Johnny silos of knowledge, which makes them indispensable. We start having multidisciplinary teams, and teams need to know about things such as user research, service design, DevOps, and how we can then deliver solutions at pace and at scale. We spoke about quick to market, but not only quick to market, quick to fix, quick to improve. And that is then being responsive. And that is what's going to differentiate ourselves. So was there research done? There was some, and there's still much more to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Cor. Yeah, a lot of research was done for sure. And I think that this was also honed and defined over a little while, right? A couple of years worth of work for many, many people actually researching this and figuring out what the best approach would be. You know, I think that research is such a critical thing when you are trying to develop a framework like this and have it be applicable for more than one industry silo. But I like the concept that you brought up of multidisciplinary teams. Yeah, that is becoming more and more a critical element of any organization. Literally, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Agile Digital Services specifically or not. Having a multidisciplinary team is really helpful to most organizations. Okay, it will lead to rapid outcomes if it's managed appropriately. Yeah. Obviously, you cannot have a everybody does everything approach, because that never works, right? People have certain skills and other people simply don't have those skills. Okay, but I think one of the key elements of trying to recognize the skills that your organization has, and in each person, there are probably skills you aren't aware of. Enhancing those skills and bringing them out and giving them the creativity and the room to develop those skills and actually show you what they can do is really important. And if you want to be agile, what we're talking about here really is an agile mindset. Yeah, that's what we're talking about once again. So, Karen, did you want to add something to that?
On the skills point, so I think that's one of the things about Agile, right? We want to really develop those T-shaped skills. So we also want to do a lot of coaching. We also, as individuals, we want to be more generalist specialists. So we're still going to have our specialist domains. So even if I am in IT or a software developer, I need to broaden those skills. If I'm in business, then I need to broaden those digital skills, right? And when we talk about these cross-functional teams and this collaborative approach, that's when the best solutions are actually going to be put on the table. And that also allows teams then to do more experimentation, because when you're experimenting, you are working together, you're talking the same language, you are trying and testing things, right? So that also helps to deliver your products to market a lot quicker as well.
Yeah, totally agree with you there. Really, totally agree with you. You know, just wanted to say a shout out to the folks again on social. You know, there's just so many people on social. I mean, we've got folks from all over the world joining us. You know, we've got some innovation. So welcome, Tally, for an innovation consultant from the UK. It's just so many different people from all over the world. You know, Karthik, thanks for the sort of info there, because introducing digital driving licenses in your country was one of the great examples that did that. So here's another one from Karthik as well, which was many services by Victoria using during COVID. So digital vaccine certificates, for example, that was another great example. So we've seen plenty of actual digital services examples where things were delivered at pace and at scale. I mean, the vaccine certificates were a big one, right? Huge pace, huge scale in order to get this right. But yeah, lots and lots of comments coming through from everybody here. I like the fact. Oh, welcome as well, Campanda from Zambia. It's good to see some African folks, or lots of African folks joining us. We've got people from Namibia as well. So Gabriel, hi, welcome. Tons and tons of folks, but it's really good. If you have any questions, don't forget, just pop them through and we'll get to them, just in case you missed that earlier. All right, let us pop in and take our next question, which, Karen, this question is for you. Who is the target audience really for Agile DS?
Great, thanks, Nigel. So depending where your digital transformation strategy is, I think we also can't assume that every organization's at a different part, right, in terms of their transformation journey. So ideally, definitely people that are working on initiatives today, because if we do have that integrated strategy, we also know how the business is going to evolve in terms of that enterprise architecture over the next 12 or 24 months. That could be the immediate need, right? So who are those people that are going to be involved in producing these digital assets, if we can call it that? And hopefully we're also going to reuse these assets, right? We're not just going to throw them away all the time. So definitely your project managers that are leading digital services types projects, your current agile teams, anybody that's going to be part of the business that's going to be involved in that. And I actually don't know why I say that, because we're all part of the business. I mean, whether you're in IT or whether you are in the business, right, representing certain value streams. So anybody that's going to be involved in that particular value stream that starts and ends with the customer, and designing solutions that the customer actually needs. And I think that's also one of the fundamental things about digital services, is we need to be able to deliver what the customer needs when they need it. And remember, we're also designing for the customer. So a lot of times as well, when we design digital services, it's more convenient for us as an organization. It's not necessarily right for the customer because of our existing constraints. So this is also to give us that skill to think a bit broader than just looking at our own internal constraints as well, because there's always an answer to something. We just have to ask the right question. There's never a wrong answer. So we also need to be able to ask those right questions and break those barriers. So it's really anybody that's going to be involved. And I would say, from a short-term perspective, those immediate people based on your current initiatives pipeline, if you want to call it that way, and then evolve the capability across the organization as you involve your digital transformation initiatives.
Excellent. A good friend of mine once said to me, he was doing some consulting within an organization, and they wanted to do something, and their current processes didn't allow them to do it. Okay, in the way. So, they said, well, what do we do? So the simple answer is change your process. It's your process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Own it. You own it.
Exactly. This is not, 10 commandments that were cut into stone and brought down the mountain, right? This is your process, and you can change it. Okay? It is allowed, right? So think about it that way. If you processes are great because they enable people to understand what they need to do when they need to do it. Okay. They don't necessarily enable people to understand why they need to do it. Okay, and therein lies the difference. If you can understand why there's a certain step in a process, then you can understand how you can change that step to improve it, make it better, make it quicker. And I think that that's a really important thing to understand, right? So a lot of people tend to think very, very close-minded on this. Okay, where our process says we do steps A to Z, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and off we go. And now we need to digitize that. So we need to digitize all of those steps A to Z, right? That's really not necessarily the case. Okay, you quite often need to, in a digital world, rethink the entire process and say, well, you know what? We don't need those 7 steps in the middle because digital is taking care of that for us, right? So the data protection stuff that you had in place for handling of paper is no longer applicable here. How are we going to handle that digital? Now we're going to do it in a digital way, right? And it's a lot easier in some ways. And there are different things to take into account. So the processes need to be looked at and changed. But yeah, I think pretty much Agile business analysis, though, the session we did last week on business analysis is very, very important in an Agile DS world. Having a BA or a couple of qualified Agile BAs involved in your digital transformation, okay, using Agile DS and having them understand the Agile DS framework will be hugely beneficial when it comes to implementing any of those. Yeah, okay, everybody, I think we have a lot of questions stacking up here. So let's take a look at our next question, okay? And our next question is, Agile DS focuses strongly on user needs and user experience. Core, What are your thoughts on that question?
My thoughts are it is high time that we stop telling the user what we want them to use because of what we think and actually ask them what is it that they need. And therefore, we are covering user research, and we specifically want to understand the user. What is it that you want in our service? And as we spoke, I thought also of something that's become normalized for us, and that is when you do fly, you're booking in and you're selecting of your seat. It's become normal. We used to stand in queues at counters. Now we drop the bags and go to the slow lounge and chill there. And that has been refined because we had to think, what do travelers want? And how can we make it easy for them? How many steps will be needed? You already mentioned continuous research, but we add to that and say it must be an inclusive research. We must be broadened in that. We're going to touch on it a bit lower down in what's covered, but it's not only for those with the most current and most smartest devices. We need to cover everybody in our services. And as I talk with us, some examples we were shared with is an organization that we are dealing with who converted their leave application to a digital service. And it was imposed from that point. However, they are in the manufacturing businesses, and a number of their factory workforce do not have easy access to computers. Why did they not include the app? Because most people are carrying an app, and forget my Nokia, I also have a smarter one. But it could have been there, so you need to become inclusive, think about it, involve the whole team, share those findings, because what I find out may be my opinion, biased as it is, but bouncing it off others will give more and other and complementary insight. Something which is a very much an agile phrase, but it's used wider as well, is the user persona. Where we start putting characteristics and even a descriptive, a generic face and a name to it, our typical user, and what would Nigel want when Nigel is a person having certain requirements and we have certain targets for them. We also, and the abbreviation lingo is important, UX, user experience, is also something. How do they perceive your solution? I may think it works for me, but do they really want to drag something where they can just press a button or press their finger on a reader? There's this balance between the user and the business needs, because Karen has said we can do many things, but not everything is useful, and we need to keep that in mind. And so to this point, if I could draw a small line, is about the user and what they want. And then we go further. I have a career history in software teams as a member and later a manager as well. But now we need to also think about accessibility. We do not want to block out people. The digital divide is there. I think it will always be there. We need to give alternate options available so that we try and prevent what's known as digital exclusion. And if I may drop in a quick example, in designing for accessibility, a recent situation that was shared with me from a neighboring country, Botswana. When COVID was in hard lockdown, one of the cell phone providers there created a portal for online recharge because the bulk of their customers were using prepaid airtime. And the behavior before was to buy it from vendors at the street, which were now not possible anymore. And what they then knew about their customer base is that only about 50% of their customer base have the so-called smartphone where an app could work. The rest still have the basic telephone, and therefore they developed a parallel USSD or smart SMS way of also doing it. So you're not saying, here is the great thing for the clever ones or the ones with the new technology. It's saying, here is a combined solution for everybody else. And through that, the digital services have actually changed the behavior of the customers. And what was super, there's also sometimes a bit of luck needed. The recharge portal was in development when lockdown happened. And because it was prioritized, they had a significant advantage on competitors. So it even grew them a bit of market share as well. So, short point, inclusive, user-driven, user-directed feedback with all the quickness and refinement as we're going along.
Very, very good points, Cor. I think those are fantastic points you've made there. And it is all about the user, what they need. And do not fall into the trap of being able to define your system or defining your system based on your own capabilities. Okay. That's the biggest mistake you can make. If you do that, you will end up with a system that your users don't want. Okay. You need to find out how to do this properly. If you don't have the skills in-house to do it, learn those skills, import those skills, employ those skills, outsource to get those skills. But look at the solution and what your users want. Karen, your final thoughts on this one.
I think a lot of times when we sit in, let's just say, user requirements workshops and we're designing digital services, we'll get super users in the room and we'll say, what do you want out of the solution, right? Or we get some UX people in the room and say, what do you want? And I don't know what I want because I don't know what my options are. That's the reality of the situation. So I think that's the most ridiculous question that people start out with, right? Because I don't know what I don't know. So when we look at user needs and user experience, we need to activate the senses, number one, right? So one is there's a problem to solve or an opportunity to exploit. And, how do we want them to feel? How do we want them to think? What we want them to see, what we want them to do. And the only reason someone's going to use a digital service is because they want to do something. So that's actually the primary need. That's what we're servicing at the end of the day. So that's why it's so important that we do strongly focus on user needs and experience, and then also put something in front of them as quickly as possible. So when you're designing digital services, we're probably going to throw the first version away, right? Because I'm going to build prototypes. I want to show you something. I want you to use it and to give me your feedback. And we're going to build incrementally, which is important as well. So that also then says is that these needs are going to change as we put more stuff in front of people. Now their brains start working, but I want this too, and I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to do that. So even then when we design these things, we have to make sure that the design is really, really sound. So, we are able to turn things on really quickly, throw things away really, really quickly, but also build on and add new features and functionalities really, really seamlessly, but in an incremental manner as well. Thank you.
Karen, you're absolutely right. And I think the term is agile, right? To do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of people don't know what agile is, right?
That's true.
It just says, I'm going to bump something in front of you and you better use it.
And you better use it, exactly. So Suchitra's posted up a great example here of a digital service. That would be the DigiLocker service developed by the Indian government, right? The platform was for issuance and verification of documents and certificates, eliminating the use of physical documents. And if you've ever been to India or know anything about India, I can assure you that this was a huge step forward, okay? So it's a challenge for many citizens in India to actually prove their identity, through identity documents and so on. So this was a huge step forward and has made a massive difference. So Suchitra, thanks. That's a really, really good example of the kind of thing that is a good digital service. Okay, I think we need to move on now. So let's take a look at the next question. How does Agile DS fit in with other Agile frameworks? Karen, I think this one's for you.
So Agile DS definitely fits in with things like our traditional Scrum terminologies, and I call it traditional because it's probably the oldest Agile framework, whether we're using things like SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework, and obviously DSDM, right? So if you look at Agile PM and Agile BA and Agile DS, a lot of that is based on the DSM framework. So it also looks at the government delivery services framework as well. And it talks to things like user experience design thinking. When you're looking at DevOps, DevSecOps, DevBizOps, when you're looking at things like, our continuous integration, our continuous delivery. So it really fits into all of those other frameworks. So although there's specific, let's just say, a way of work when we're working in digital services, it's not going to be something that should be foreign to people. And that's what Agile is also about. It's about creating this consistent terminology because that will avoid miscommunication. We're all on the same page. So it is not something that's going to be foreign to a lot of people. If you do have Agile experience, it's going to just complement what you are doing already.
Fantastic. Thanks, Karen. So there's a lot of overlap between the other Agile frameworks in essence. So I think that if you've got some Agile experience or certainly an Agile qualification, you will find this very familiar, okay, in that sense. A lot of the terminology will be familiar to you. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's move on because the questions are stacking up here. We've got quite a few. So what's the difference between the Agile DS Foundation, Practitioner, and courses and exams, Core?
The way that we are delivering this is we have first a short orientation session where we speak about and introduce the delegates to the material, also provide them the reading material. And then the foundation part is a three-day session where there's 2.5 days of content, and then the foundation exam is done on the afternoon of the third day. These exams are administered by APMG. They follow the same process and format as the other Agile exams. So it's again 50 online questions, multiple choice, and a 50% pass mark, having 25 points or better. And in the foundation, we focus on the knowledge and understanding of the guidance. Okay, that's a starting point. That's also the prerequisite to sit the practitioner exam. The practitioner is done in a follow-up 1.5-day class with a afternoon exam. It is a open book, the textbook, which I'm going to display whether you have it. I still have the old non-digital version, but there will be a digital version available to the delegates. It's an open book referenced document, 80 points scenario-based, complex multiple choice, and a 50% pass mark, which again is then, in this case, 40 points or better. The foundation certification does not expire, but there is a 5-year renewal cycle on the practitioner. So good preparation and then great application, also in a generic case study-based practitioner exam. Thanks, Nigel.
Thanks, Core. So just to summarize what you were saying there, essentially foundation is covering the terminology and the what, yeah? And the practitioner is covering the how to apply this framework in the real world, essentially.
Yeah. True so.
True. Excellent. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to our next question. I think Core, this is also for you. Which prioritization approaches are covered in Agile DS fairly briefly? We don't need to go into too much depth on them, but let's see, because this could take all day, right? If we're doing a course.
I need to prioritize my answer, you are saying.
Yes.
Okay. When we take the Agile project management as a starting point, it mainly uses the Moscow preparation of prioritization, where we look at must have, should have, could have, and won't have this time. But in Agile DS, we expanded. There's in fact 5 different prioritization techniques, and you can select which ones you want to do. We will cover them with examples in the class. Relative prioritization, stack ranking, Moscow, the Kano or Kano method of looking at exciters and things that we expect to be there. And then one that is a long term, but it needs an abbreviation, weighted shortest job first, WSJF. Use that in your next chat with somebody. But these are different things. And again, we've got the flexibility to say, for what we want to take to market fast, which one is appropriate. So a fair selection, and you can decide which one suits your need better.
Fantastic. So it's really good to hear there's a lot of different approaches discussed. And I think that makes a big difference, right? So you can use the ones which suit you best and which are the most applicable for your requirements. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, let's move on to our next question then. And this one, Karen, is for you. Which approaches for deploying incrementally are covered in the course?
So we definitely look at DevOps. And so that's really the integration of business and IT services. And then also when we look at things like continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment, right? So it's really looking at, we want to be in a position where when we move from one sandbox to another, so, whether I'm doing unit testing into our, solution testing, integration testing, and then obviously going into our live production environments, how we can obviously get that process a lot more effective. So what the customer needs, hopefully, is bug-free. And also it integrates into our existing infrastructure and architecture. And then also things like refactoring, right? So it's important when we do have time, and that's one of the things about digital services, because we don't live in a perfect world. So when we look at our current architectures in our organizations, a lot of us are carrying technical debt. So as we build on these digital services, we also need to have this mindset, well, while we have the opportunity and we're building small little bits, because we must keep it as small as possible, right? And we're building incrementally, that can also give us some time to refactor some of our code. So either, we're going to fix, enhance, throw away, but we're also then improving our technology platforms within the organization as well. So that's my quick, short answer.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Karen. Yeah. So again, a lot of approaches for deployments as well, whichever works and integrates with what you already use, and you can adapt. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so next question that we have is, what service lifecycle is actually used in Agile DS core?
Nigel, every project has a life cycle, and this one follows a new set of terminology, but there's a lot of overlap with some life cycles we may be familiar with. In Agile DS, we start with what we call discovery. And discovery is where we determine the user needs, as we covered before. And then we go to a phase called alpha. Alpha is where Karen also said we may build something, and if it doesn't work, we throw it away and we try it again. And then, interesting, we go into a beta, but we first do a private beta within the organization, and then we do a public beta. And of course, after every phase, there's review, there's retrospective, there's feedback. And when your public beta is successful, going live just means opening it up. And then your public beta is just a controlled live in that sense. And that gives you usually a few surprises, things we didn't think about, or funny users who do things they shouldn't have, and we need to make sense. And this continues then for multiple cycles until we get to the point of service retirement. It may be that at a certain point we decide, well, this one has served its purpose. We don't need this anymore. So discovery, alpha, beta twice, and live is what we do.
Excellent. Thanks, Core. That makes perfect sense. It sounds like a really sound approach to taking stuff live. Okay, so our next question is then for you, Karen. Which principles are included in Agile DS? It makes sense.
So we've got 10 generic principles, right? And then we've also got some governance principles that we also need to consider as well. So the principles are very much aligned to our DevOps thinking, to our UX design thinking. So things like design with data, like, we will need to build based on data-driven decisions and make sure that that's effective. Keeping things simple. We are going to do things like iterate continuously. So there's a whack load of principles. I mean, we don't unfortunately have time to go into all of them right now. One of the things I think as well is we need to use the right people. So we always need to make sure as well that we can capacitate the organization to have the right people around the table in the discussions that we need, and also make decisions really, really quickly. So it's also about empowering people and pushing that decision making to the lowest level of the organization. And then sharing, I think that's a critical thing. So keep everything open, right? So what we mean by that is whether it's the code, whether it is the design, whether it is our lessons learned, these things are really, really important, because you're not the only digital services team that's building solutions in your organization. And a lot of the stuff that one team's doing, another team might be dependent on, or they can reuse those assets going forward as well. Thanks, Nigel. Excellent.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Karen. Okay, we actually have quite a lot of live questions to get through. So let's take a look at our first one. The first question is, any best practices during Agile implementation in the current trend of digital markets? Okay, so what are the best practices in this area? Well, there are quite a lot of best practices in this area, but Karen, do you want to...
Agile Digital Services, right? Come on the course. That is a best practice in itself.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That is a no-brainer. Yeah. So this is a fairly quick question. So thanks for asking it. But I think Agile DS is probably your first go-to point here when you're trying to implement any digital trend or any digital implementation. So yes, there are. It's helpful to know other Agile methodologies and so on as you're developing them. Using Agile PM, for example, or you need some business analysis skills along the way. But take a look at the Agile DS qualification on the PM Ideas website, and you'll find all the information that you need there. All right, let's move on then to the next one. This is going to be an interesting one. So what are the top 3 challenges for the change managers of any company while undergoing agile transformations? I'll start with you, Karen.
Yeah. That's cool. So one is we always say we need that leadership buy-in. So leadership generally buy in, but then they'll throw it over the fence and become someone else's problem. So if you really want to have a good agile transformation, it's not just about the leadership, it's about middle management, because middle management typically make or break an organization. We need to understand that. So there's a lot of work that has to be done at that middle management layer. But then also changing that command and control style of leadership, right? Because agile is really where we want to try and push the decision making to the people that are doing the work. So, and we also want these cross-functional teams, and it's about understanding that we're all part of a value stream. So whoever's involved in delivering a product or service, and that starts and ends with the customer, they are part of a value stream, and we have to break down the silo mentality. So although organizations are structured horizontally, we deliver vertically, we deliver services to our customers horizontally, right? And it's about having access to people when we need them. So if we say we want to be agile, but then I need a decision made and someone says to me, well, you know what, wait till the steer car in 6 weeks' time. That says, well, this initiative can stop in 6 weeks' time. And it's about getting everybody in the business to understand we're on one team. And that is a big challenge. So most of the challenges when you embark on agile is that one is we don't have the right culture. So a lot of people change management has to take place. We have to build this culture. And then the other thing is that we really need to make sure that we also capacitate our teams in terms of what agile actually is, because there's agile, there's fragile, and there's wagile. So, and also agile is not going to work in every scenario either. So it's more about helping people to say, these are the ways of work. So whether you need to use the plan-driven, use it. Absolutely, because not everything needs to be delivered in an agile way or an agile way of work because of that scope, size, complexity, and risk exposure of that particular initiative. So for me, those are the top 3 challenges that organizations typically face. And most of it is around people, and then obviously the amount of technical debt that they are carrying within the organization.
Thanks, Karen. That's really, really informative. Corey, you've got wanted to add something to that.
Yes, one of the cultures that we also need to instill in change managers and managers broadly is that well-known agile saying that if you have to fail fast and learn fast. But I want to add to that, and this is not my own wisdom, I read in the last while. If you can be successful quickly, that's even more awesome. So give it a try. Let it work. And if it doesn't work, learn from it. And failure is just excluding one step towards your path of success. Thank you.
Very, very good quotes there.
And just to add to that, and I think we chatted about it last week, when you adopt agile, don't say like, now it's a broad brush approach. Start small. Take that business unit or a value stream where you've got people that have got this more open mindset, because agile is a mindset and it's a set of behaviors. It's not even a framework, right? It's in my mind. And let them have those quick wins, and you learn. And as Cor said, right? And those learnings, and then you build from there. It's not like tomorrow the exec says we're all going agile, now the whole organization must be agile. Yep. That's typically where I've seen agile transformations fail as well.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agree with you. And I'm glad the question was raised around change managers, because change management is such a critical part of transitioning to an agile environment. Yeah. If you don't involve the change managers, it isn't going to work. Simple as that. So excellent. Okay, let's move on, take our next question. And that is, what would be the biggest benefits to doing the AgileDS certification? And do I need digital services experience to qualify for it? Karen, I'll start with you.
When you look at what organizations are looking for from a recruitment perspective, right, and even their teams today, we are expected that we need a certain level of digital services skills. Most people in organizations today are engaging with digital services, or they're involved in user requirements workshops, or they're even involved in the building or delivery or servicing of these digital services, right? So that's one of the benefits. I need to make sure that my own skills are current, and what the environment is demanding is that you need digital services skills. Even recruitment agencies are looking for digital services skills today, right? Because customers want people with a certain level of understanding. And in terms of having experience, you'll be quite surprised that you probably have experience today because you're engaging with digital services all the time. So you don't need detailed technical knowledge around digital services. That's why the course is structured where we have the three-day foundation, and then we follow that on with the practitioner course. So the foundation will give you a good, solid understanding of what digital services is, what are the roles and responsibilities, what are those terminologies, some of the prioritization techniques, how does this fit in the real world? And then the practitioner is how do we actually now practicalize it, if you want to call it that. I don't even know if that's such a word, right? But how do we then actually make sure that we're able to use this in the business environment? So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Karen. Corey, you wanted to add something?
I brought my whole box of tricks together. Here is your digital experience. If you look at your mobile device and you have a look at all the apps on it, that is what is in your pocket coming in. You definitely have the end user experience. And what is super great when we now go through the content is we see the good and the bad of what we already have had experience from. And we see the opportunities going forward. We heard about that government documentation portal. We in South Africa have heard of a national health system with digitized medical records. That is a super great value stream that's waiting and overdue to be done. And again, if you can carry it, it's with you. So thank you, just to say that we already have it. We just refine it.
Exactly, just refine it. I totally agree. I think one of the biggest benefits of having this Agile DS certification is your employability. Okay, most certainly. People are looking for digital skills these days, and having a true digital skill like this is a huge benefit. So it's a no-brainer in my mind. Thanks. There's
also just quickly solves organizations' capacity issues, right? So get the IT specialists, the software developers, the architects, and all of that to work on complex initiatives, because you've always got this resource constraint for technical skills. And now because you're broadening the skills base, on the less complex stuff, I can use anybody in the organization to work on that stuff. So you're also solving a skill shortage problem within your organization.
That is such a valid point you made there. It's such a valid point. You know, it's no longer the days of, we go out with the BN, we go and talk to the users. So that's what you want. We go away and we develop that for a year, come back, here it is. And that's not what we asked for. Okay. It's actually involving everybody in this. And, you know, having that open mindset to be able to take creative ideas from people that would not normally be part of this team, okay, who are now part of the team. That's the inclusiveness that we're talking about. So very good points there. Okay, let's move on because we are running out of time. So here's a good one. What are the setbacks or problems to be encountered when using Agile Digital Services? Well, I can see that question we could cover. Probably we need another hour for it. However, let's pick one each. Okay, so I think I'll pick my first one, and that's going to be lack of buy-in and understanding from upper management. Okay, that's going to be a core one. Karen, what's your top pick?
Business and the technocrats actually working together and keeping the customer at the central of their decision making.
Good one as well, definitely. Cor, what is your top pick?
I think a challenge problem that we have is if there's an unwillingness to change our ways. Just because we've been used to doing it in the past in a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way to do it now. So we can actually move from what we know to the new and make it work.
Fantastic. Hope that answered your question. Okay, we got time for the last question, which we're going to ask for today, which is, would you recommend that someone who hasn't had Agile training attend the DS Foundation and Practitioner course? To be honest with you, yes, absolutely. Karen, Cor, you guys agree?
If I may say, it's not a prerequisite. If you have had an understanding or exposure, it's great, but it is not a pre-requirement. We're focusing on this, and we cover enough in the basis, in the foundation, as we've said, to bring you up to speed, to start applying it. You can also, if you want to, use an interval between the foundation and the practitioner so that you can do some application. So short answer is, please come. You're always welcome.
Always welcome. Absolutely. You do not need to have Agile experience to attend this. All right. Fantastic. Thank you. So with that, I think we need to close off. I'd just like to go between Cor and Karen, just get your closing remarks. Karen, why don't I start with you?
From our side, when we look at digital transformation and we look at digital services, which is a key component of that, it is a critical skill that everybody does need today. And it is something that also is going to set organizations apart from, those the successful and sustainable organizations versus those ones that aren't going to be as successful. And even if your organization is not really exposing you to these kind of things today, invest in yourself, right? Because as Nigel also said, the employment base is shrinking. And what is going to differentiate you at the end of the day? And I really believe it's going to be around digital services, that agile mindset, and really providing value to an organization. And by having the skill, you're definitely adding value to your customers as well as the organizations that you serve. Thank you.
Perfect. Cor, what are your final thoughts?
There are no limits. We can create an organizational, challenging, exciting, and effective way of integrating digital services, focusing on the user and being inclusive. I'm very excited on this. It's been around, and there's no better time like now to take this on board and take it forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Guys, thank you very much. And just thanks to all of our viewers. You've been wonderful today, chucking in such great questions for the panel. Thank you, Karen, once again, and Cor once again for making time to do this session. We really appreciate it. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about what's coming up now. So over on our website, you can look at at least get answers to over 1,700 questions now. Okay, it's a massive, comprehensive free resource. Connects you with over 200 experts from around the world. Just don't forget, you can also listen to the audio podcast versions on your preferred platform. Also, take a moment to like, comment, and share and subscribe. It really doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps everybody else find the comments, find the content out there. So we've got a lot coming up. We've actually got an awful lot coming up on the show. So just a busy week or two coming up. Basically, on Friday, the 26th of May, we have our What Impact Does AI Have on Projects and ITSM? And that's a German show, Level Up show. On Friday the 2nd, yeah, we're missing Monday's Level Up, by the way, due to a public holiday. So Friday, the 2nd of June, we'll be back with what to look out for in the best cybersecurity training on Level Up. We're going to have another interesting session on Level Up on Monday, the 5th of June, on how to become an authentic leader. And then on Wednesday, the 7th of June, we do a BRM case study with Torb Solutions and Unilever. And that's going to be also a really interesting discussion. So all of those details are on APMG's website. So please pop over there and take a look, subscribe to the events. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next show. Goodbye.